Hunter Biden has indeed been convicted of gun charges by a jury in a Delaware trial. The jury took 3 hours to reach a verdict against the president's son, and Hunter Biden still faces a separate tax crime trial in California. We now want to go out to Kailey Leinz, who's been standing by for us in Washington. And Kailey, the impact of this?
Could be significant, Caroline. Hunter Biden here found guilty of all 3 counts with which he was charged. This is the first time in history that a child of a sitting president has been convicted in federal court. Of course, this all stems from his purchase of a gun in 2018 when he was addicted, according to prosecutors, to crack cocaine. And this jury has indeed agreed with the prosecution, finding him guilty of these 3 crimes, which he will be sentenced for not today, but in a number of weeks. It potentially carries a maximum sentence of 25 years in prison, although it's unlikely that maximum sentence would be given for a first-time offender. But obviously, this has massive both personal and political implications for the incumbent president. Of course, this is the son of Joe Biden we are talking about. It could potentially bring political ramification to him as well, in addition to a great deal of personal difficulty. We have heard from President Biden affirmed just days ago that he would not intervene and pardon his son if he was indeed found guilty, as he has been today. There could potentially be some political upside here in that this, of course, follows just less than 2 weeks ago Donald Trump being found guilty in a court in New York of 34 felony counts and allegations from Trump and other Republicans that the justice system has been weaponized against Donald Trump. But it's the same justice system that has now found Hunter Biden guilty of a number of crimes. So potentially it throws some cold water on that argument. Still, though, it does shine an uncomfortable spotlight on the president's family. And this also is just one case in which Hunter Biden had been charged with crimes. He does face a separate trial in September on tax crimes, Caroline.
Yes, exactly. That one in California. Can you give us a breakdown of what next then, Kailey, post this verdict?
Well, we'll be awaiting sentencing, Caroline, is really the question here. As I mentioned, 25 years is the maximum. 2 of these gun charges carries a maximum sentence of 10 years each. The third, a maximum sentence of 5 years. But this is the first time that Hunter Biden, that is, has been convicted of a crime. So that could bring potentially more leniency. But really, we'll be looking to see what ultimately the judge decides. Is it will be up to that one individual in terms of the sentencing. We'll also be looking to see whether there is an appeal on the part of the defense and whether or not they then look ahead to that trial that is set to happen in September. If there is an appellate process still paying out in this case, could they successfully delay that trial potentially, though they have not yet had success in doing so. And it's worth keeping in mind that that September tax trial he will be facing in California brings us ever closer to the presidential election, in which Joe Biden, his father, is trying to seek a reelection for a second term, and that timing potentially could add even greater political difficulty than what we're seeing here today with the conviction of the president's son. The first time in history, again, Caroline, that this has happened to the child of a sitting president.
And as you said, already President Biden has said he would not pardon, but I'm interested as to whether we will hear from him, if there's any idea as to whether he will speak on the matter.
Well, he does have a scheduled speaking engagement today. He'll actually be speaking at a gun safety event here in Washington, and he's set to travel to the G7 in Italy. This is where the personal and the presidential duty potentially come into conflict. Caroline, is obviously this is likely a very difficult day for the Biden family. We will see if he makes any statement on this before departing to Italy. But when he does so, attends the G7, that will be carrying out the duties of the presidency, trying to focus on geopolitics, foreign policy, all of the other responsibilities of this office, while also having to deal with the difficulty of having your son, the only living person from the car crash that killed his first wife and daughter many years ago. And of course, Beau Biden, who had survived that crash, died of cancer back in 2015. And that is when many of Hunter Biden's addiction problems really began. And that really was what was at the heart of this case, Caroline. This is a story of someone who was struggling with an addiction. This was very painful, as we saw ex-girlfriends, ex-wives, even Naomi Biden, Hunter Biden's daughter, testifying throughout this trial about the personal difficulty and what he was grappling with over the course of those years that he was an addict, and obviously just shines a very uncomfortable spotlight on the first family.
Very personal, Kailey, but very political in nature. And I therefore wonder what impact you think it will have longer term as we enter the election.
It's going to be hard to tell immediately, Caroline, as it has been hard to tell just in the last few weeks what the real impact of Donald Trump's own felony conviction has been, as we haven't seen any great shift in polling thus far. So we'll see if it actually has a material impact on the way that Joe Biden is polling. What I would point out here is there is a very important distinction. What we are talking about in this case is a conviction of the son of a president, not someone who has held the office himself or is seeking to be president. That is different than Donald Trump, who not only is a former president of the United States, but currently is the presumptive Republican nominee. So while this may complicate the messaging that Joe Biden and other Democrats may wanted to have utilized in this election cycle, the idea that Donald Trump is morally questionable by being a convicted felon, perhaps that argument gets more difficult to make when your own son is also convicted of crimes. So that could be politically complicated. And of course, there has been a lot of scrutiny in Congress of Hunter Biden and the entire Biden family. A lot of allegations made by many different members as part of the impeachment inquiry that largely seems to have died down. But it'll be interesting to see if this revs anything up in that regard further congressionally as well. All that said, we're really just going to have to be paying attention to the polls, as right now it is June. We still have almost 5 full months to go before the election on November 5th. And a lot could happen between now and then, including a second criminal trial of Hunter Biden.
Kailey, we are, of course, a business network. Is there any implication on companies surrounding gun law and indeed the way that might direct travel for purchases, for demand, for supply?
That's an interesting question, Caroline. Obviously, Joe Biden is largely a president who has spoken about gun safety. He will, in fact, be doing so at an Everytown for Gun Safety event later on today, which, of course, is affiliated with Michael Bloomberg, the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP. But largely, he is a president that has advocated for greater gun control measures, which is difficult for perhaps explanation-wise when your own son illegally purchased a firearm, as he was found guilty of doing today with this crack cocaine addiction. Will it, though, materially change anything around gun laws, Caroline? It's very unlikely, given that no matter what developments we have seen in the gun violence area, mass shooting after mass shooting in the United States, nothing really is ever done legislatively. Joe Biden has signed a number of executive orders looking to restrain gun purchases in some areas, but it's something that you really can't crack down on without congressional approval. And with Republicans in control of the House, that is unlikely to be happening, at least in this Congress.
Look, the courts are being put through the test at the moment, Kailey. Are we likely to anticipate more of this as a political narrative, as a political way of doing business here in the United States?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, Caroline, because we are at this really unique moment in time where we now have not just a former president and presumptive nominee who has been convicted of crimes, but a president's son convicted of crimes within the same week, with 2-week period. Both of these obviously incredibly historic. We have never seen anything like this before. It will be interesting to see how this alters the narrative, because after Donald Trump's conviction of 34 counts in New York just less than 2 weeks ago, there has been a narrative about a justice system that has been weaponized or targeting Donald Trump. Whether or not that is true, as Joe Biden did not actually have the power to, say, direct a New York state case against Donald Trump, he could theoretically have the power to step in with this special counsel investigation into Hunter Biden, with this trial, potentially with a pardon, and he has declined to do so. He has declined to intervene, as he has really been trying to speak a message of preserving faith in the justice system and allowing it to do its work. So now that this has happened to his son being found guilty of 3 crimes here in Delaware, it will be interesting to see if it does indeed alter the narrative around the way the justice system is working, because you can no longer say it's only going after Donald Trump. It has come for a Biden as well.